So this is an eMac, not an iMac, but an eMac. It was a short-lived Apple all-in-one computer made around 2002. It was made exclusively for the educational market, which is what the E stands for in the name. Nowadays, when people think about Apple, they probably think about the higher end of the consumer market. But when Apple was just starting out, they were fighting hard to put their products in hands of teachers, educators, and students, and to make themselves a dominant player in education. And even though they've managed to do that with the Apple II, throughout the 90s, they lost a fair bit of their market share to PCs. So when Steve Jobs came back in 97, he again started preaching about the importance and relevance of Apple in educational institutions.
The second market is one that's very close to my heart, is education. Apple put the first computers in education. Apple did it again with the Macintosh. And Apple is still the dominant leader in education. Now, Apple is the single largest education supplier in the world.
So I know people have various opinions about Steve Jobs and Apple in general, but I find this era of Apple coming back to be super interesting just because they were doing so many crazy things to assume a dominant place in the marketplace again. And I mean, this keynote in general is like watching The Return of the Jedi. You have the underdog rising from the ashes and fighting back again. You have drama, crazy plot twists, the unexpected product announcements, and even the main villain himself makes an appearance. You had the visionary Steve giving speeches.
You know, I think you always had to be a little different to buy an Apple computer. They are the people that are not just out to get a job done, they're out to change the world. And they're out to change the world using whatever great tools they can get. And we make tools for those kinds of people.
And you had people cheering them on like crazy. Quite the contrast from the modern Apple keynotes, if you ask me. So yeah, starting in 1997, Apple was paying more attention to the educational market. And by the early 2000s, they've managed to make some considerable progress in that area. For example, in 2001, when they managed to sell 23,000 iBook computers to a local district in Virginia.
It has been helping teachers teach and students learn since 1977, since a year after the company started. We've been doing this for a long time, 24 years to be precise. And it's in the DNA of our company. We really care deeply about this. We've taken our first order for our new iBooks, and that order is for 23,000.
So I know that modern schools also probably buy Apple products, I guess iPads or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that the Chromebooks and other devices are dominating that market now. And as Apple grew bigger in the consumer and professional market, I guess the education isn't as important as it used to be. So the computer we're taking a look at today was designed to be sold to the educational market exclusively, although it was also briefly made available to the consumer market. It's a G4 system, and even though it is quite similar to the iMac G3 in appearance, there are considerable differences between the two machines. First of all, the eMac has a bigger 17-inch screen, which contributes to the size and the volume of the machine, but also to the weight. This goddamn monstrosity weighs around 55 pounds or 25 kilos, and I damn near broke my back while lugging it to the 5th floor. So the guy I got this from was selling it for $70, which seemed a bit much to me, so I offered 40. He agreed, so I went to pick it up. In the ad, it was described to be in excellent condition. But when I got there and asked him whether or not the computer works, he said that he wasn't sure. The guy was a reseller and he had a whole shed full of old crap. So I took a gamble, and when I got it home, I wiped it down and tried powering it on. I plugged it in, but the thing was dead as a doornail. It just wouldn't respond at all, which was super bizarre. I thought something was wrong with my extension cord, so I tried plugging in a hairdryer, but it worked perfectly. So I thought, great, there goes my $40. But I thought I could give repairing this computer a shot. Now, it was at that point that I've noticed the computer was missing almost all the screws, which is a super bad sign because it means that someone was in here before. So perhaps someone tried repairing this computer and failed, or perhaps half of the components were missing from the inside, but whatever, I took out the rest of the screws and this cool swivel base the computer sits on. Underneath that was a little hatch door which houses the PRAM battery as well as the 2 RAM slots. This door had the last external screw in it, and that son of a bitch was stripped so hard I couldn't get it out. At that point, I was already frustrated enough because the computer wouldn't turn on that I seriously considered just breaking this plastic door off. Now, fortunately for the computer, I found out you could just lift out the other shell without taking the door off first. Upon lifting the shell, I found that the switch wasn't plugged in.
Well, that could be the problem. The switch isn't plugged in.
So I thought this might be the easiest repair ever. So I plugged the power switch back in, reassembled the computer, plugged in the power, and tried starting it up. But unfortunately, there was no improvement. So I took the computer back apart and just started poking around. Since the computer wouldn't start at all, I thought there might be something wrong with the power supply. And I've managed to find a fuse near the transformer of the power supply. So I thought, awesome, perhaps it's a blown fuse. But upon testing it, it turns out there was nothing wrong with that fuse. So even though it wasn't terribly likely, I did encounter some situations where the computer wouldn't start without a working PRAM battery. But the thing is, the PRAM battery was under that cover with the stripped screw. So against my better judgment, I did my best to remove the stuck screw, which made me curse in like 7 languages.
Oh, yeah, about the bus.
Also, could you see me jumping there like a little bitch? Yeah, after taking a peek, I could see that there are all sorts of spiders living in there. And my wife is very much afraid of them. So I wasn't totally sure how to handle all of that. So after sweating and swearing for like half an hour, I was finally managed to get the cover off.
Oh, God.
So after that, I had to figure out how to get the spiders out without freaking out my wife. Now, I don't really know whether or not they were alive or dead, but there was really no good way of getting them out. So I just kind of mangled them out of there. Sorry, little buddy. So after that, I took the old PRAM battery out, and I was super happy it hadn't leaked. And I was also happy the majority of the components seemed to be in there. After testing the battery, I could see that it was indeed dead. So I popped in a spare I had lying around. I got roasted in the previous video for putting in the battery backwards, so I made sure to put it in the right way in this time. After that, I again reassembled the computer and tried powering it on, but unfortunately there was no change. So I kind of started running out of ideas at that point. I mean, I knew the capacitors on the power supply could be the issue, but I took a closer look and they really didn't seem to be in a bad shape. No bulges or leaks or nothing. And just when I was getting ready to take out the power supply, I've noticed something. The cable connecting the power switch to the motherboard seemed to have been broken. The wires were completely detached from the plastic connector. So I've tried putting it all back together and retesting the machine one last time.
Oh!
That's my girl being proud of me for fixa things. So even though the machine finally turned on, I still wasn't getting the startup bong. So after setting the computer up on my desk, I tried powering it on again. And the indicator light would blink 3 times, which is a telltale sign of something being wrong with the RAM. So the first thing I thought I should do was reseating the RAM. So I pulled out the first RAM stick and got a nasty surprise. Yeah, I twitched like a little bitch because I found another goddamn spider. So no wonder the RAM didn't work. This little fella was living on top of the gold RAM pins. So I got the second stick out, and then after cleaning them really good with alcohol, I tried reseating them back in. After that, I got 3 beeps, which is also an indicator of the RAM being faulty. So I tried reseating the RAM a couple of more times. I've tried turning the computer on with just the 1 stick installed, and after troubleshooting, this is what happened.
Woo! Aday!
Did you hear that? I got the most distorted and terrifying bong ever. And this is definitely not the first time I've heard these types of sounds coming from an old Macintosh when powering the computer on for the first time after years of sitting. I've actually read somewhere that these sounds can be caused by filter capacitors warming up on the audio portion of the motherboard. But unfortunately, it was followed up by the 3 beeps. So I kept tinkering with the RAM, and after a while, I finally got some results.
Oh! Wow! Oh god.
So not only did I get the Apple logo, but the computer kept booting to the login screen, which meant that it had a working hard drive inside. So given the condition of the computer when I first got it, I was absolutely blown away that I was seeing any of this. So I went digging to find the appropriate keyboard and mouse for this thing, but when I came back, I found this general error message, and when I tried restarting the machine, it would just come up with the RAM error again. So at that point, it was getting kind of late and I was getting kind of tired, so I decided to come back to this computer in the morning. But I was very happy with the progress I made. Okay, so let's do a little recap on where we are at this point with this computer. Last time we took a look at this computer, it wouldn't start, and we found the problem. It was the switch, so we got the switch fixed up. Now the computer boots intermittently, because every now and then when you start to boot it up, it crashes and it throws up a RAM issue. So what I have here is a couple of working RAM sticks. At least I think they're working. They came out of a working machine. So these are exactly the same size as the ones that were in before. Specifically this one, it looks kind of janky. It just looks like an off-brand RAM stick. So I'm hoping that these ones are gonna perform a bit better. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to turn this computer over, and yeah. Oh god. So this is the door that has given us some issues before, but fortunately I've managed to get it out. This is the battery that we've replaced, and we have cleaned the insides from the spiders that were living in there. So I'm actually going to pop this stick out because I would kind of like to have matching RAM sticks. Oh shit, so I've just noticed that these are not in fact matching RAM sticks. What's different? If you can see that, they have the notches in the wrong place, so I unfortunately didn't grab the right type of RAM. Okay, so I guess what I'll do is I'll try seeing if I have some that are compatible. So yeah, we'll see what we can come up with. So I just went looking and I checked my Packard Hell XP machine, which should be from the same time period as the eMac there, and I checked the RAM, and unfortunately it also has an incompatible RAM stick. This is the same one that I took out of the other machine. So yeah, I guess I can keep looking. So since I live in an apartment, I don't have space for all of these huge computers. So the portion of my collection is located in the basement shed, and this is one of the main reasons I'm super excited to move to a bigger house, because this sucks ass. Okay, never give up on your dreams, kids. So I've dug deep enough and I've managed to find some PC-133 sticks of RAM. And as far as I can tell, unfortunately, these are lower capacity. At least this one is. I think this one is 128 gigs. And as for this one, 128 gigs. But again, these ones came out of a working system, at least from a system that I remember turning on and working on years ago. These ones should work. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna test those, and we'll see whether or not we can get some stability improvement as far as booting up goes. Then we'll know whether or not we perhaps have a bad RAM slot or just the sticks were having some issues. Okay, so the first thing we'll do, we'll get some of our holy water, some IPA, and we're gonna just clean up the contacts of the RAM sticks as well as the slots themselves. So I'm just taking some of this stuff and I'm gonna do my best to make sure that the contacts are clean so that we have a good connection. And given the state of the RAM slots, I'm gonna take a toothbrush and I'm gonna try cleaning up the slots the best I can. Oh, I'll give you a quick tip also. If you have some isopropyl alcohol or something else in this container, it helps to pour it out in a cup or something. And one nice thing I found out is that these urine cups come in super handy for these jobs. Just, make sure to get a clean one. You can steal these when you're at the doctor's office or something. And yeah, they work really well. So I'm just giving this whole area a good clean, and we're gonna try installing this RAM and we'll see whether or not it does a better job. First one popped in, and the second one. One other thing, since we've changed out the battery, there's actually a little switch. Now I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that this is a PRAM reset switch. So we're gonna hit that, and that should get the PRAM all sorted out. Oh Jesus, I think this is by far the heaviest computer I have in my collection. And this thing is much heavier than your typical iMac would be, because it has a bigger tube, and also it has a G4, which I think the G4 actually requires a bigger heatsink. So I believe that also contributes to the weight. So we have the thing plugged in, and yeah, let's see whether or not it boots. Bonk. Nice. Bong, come on. Awesome. So we have an Apple logo, which I got before starting Mac OS. Not only does this thing work, it has a working hard drive, and it also has an installation of OS X. Just looking at it, I want to say that this is OS X Tiger, and we can see that we have 2 accounts here. So we're gonna try exploring this computer a little bit. Let's see, it has 2 accounts. Let's try getting into one. Okay, it has a password, but it's not giving me any password hints. So I spent a couple of minutes goofing around trying to guess the password, but later on we'll actually get into the main account from the recovery mode. Let's try getting into this one. Okay, we can log in the second account. Okay, I can see things popping up here. This is my favorite part of exploring old computers. I know people have different opinions on, digging through people's stuff, but it's just so interesting. Okay, I can see that this person is a person of culture because they have the dock on the left hand side, which is my preference as well, and they don't seem to have too much bloat installed. We have a couple of folders. We have Adobe Photoshop. We have this is very interesting. So if I had to guess, I would say that this computer belonged to someone who is a fan of cooking, because I can see all sorts of recipes here. It's like a cookbook or something. Oh my god, this is super nostalgic. So I'm definitely saving this. So this person, they scanned, or I guess they took photos of a cookbook, which is something I remember doing back in the day when we didn't have like scanners and things, or even decent digital cameras, but we still did it. Scalloped bananas, branded nectarines, these are fire. We have easy curries, eating well desserts, the sourdough cookbook. I'm gonna save these ones to the USB stick, and I'm giving this to my mom. This is awesome. Okay, what I wanted to check was the yeah, this is 10.4, so this is Tiger, and we're running a 1 gigahertz PowerPC G4, and yeah, we currently have 256 megabytes, which is half of what the computer came with, but hey, at least it's working. So I've spent a couple of minutes exploring this account, and the first thing I wanted to test out was the optical drive. So I have my obligatory copy of StarCraft, which should run just fine on this system. So let's try ejecting. Awesome! So I guess what we'll do is we'll install StarCraft. If it reads, I always like these mechanisms from Apple. Okay, spinning the disk up, and there it is. Okay, as far as graphics go, this thing has a Radeon 7500 card with 32 megs of RAM, which is pretty standard. And yeah, it has this CRT, and honestly, this thing looks pretty good. The CRT is in really good shape. It looks awesome. So let's install StarCraft. Wow. These speakers sounded kind of shitty when we first started a computer up, if you remember that distorted bong, but I guess they're working quite good. So the game installed successfully, and I've spent a couple of minutes test playing it. The game ran beautifully, and it looked great on that 17-inch tube. And this really took me back, because this is how I remember playing this game around 2002. And I know people are probably tired from seeing StarCraft in every one of my videos, but it's one of my favorite games of all time. And I was happy to see it run on this system. So after making sure the computer ran fine and didn't lock up due to faulty RAM, I wanted to get into the main account to see what's on the hard drive. Okay, so apparently the majority of the files on this computer are on the second account, and yeah, they're currently inaccessible. And I would really like to check out what's on the hard drive, so we're gonna try resetting the password, which is something that you could do with the earlier Macintosh operating system. So the way to do that is to go to the recovery mode. We're gonna hit restart, and then as the computer restarts, we'll try holding Command plus R, and that should get us into the recovery mode. And from there, we're gonna try resetting the password. So after restarting the computer several times, I was just unable to get into the recovery mode. So instead, I've popped in the boot disk and tried getting to the terminal that way. Okay, so the idea is to get to the terminal applications. So we're gonna go to utilities, we're gonna select terminal, and apparently there's a password reset utility we can use. I think all we need to do is type reset password. So we'll try doing that. The heck? Wait, what's wrong with the keyboard, man? Keyboard's all messed up. What? Wait. This is bizarre. What the heck? So for some reason, everything I tried typing into terminal came out as garbage. So perhaps the keyboard was switched to an alternative layout like Dvorak or something, but I couldn't figure out how to change it. Fortunately, I found a way of getting into the reset password utility without using terminal. Oh, reset password. God, perhaps I don't even have to go to the terminal, but this is very bizarre. Okay. So we have the main account here, and we're just gonna put in 1234. I think this is what I'm putting in. Jesus Lord. Okay, yeah, it is 1234. Let's see. Did this work? Oh yeah, awesome, buddy. Okay, this is much more of a desktop. So before exploring this computer, I really wanted to change the refresh rate of this CRT, because looking at the camera, I could tell it was out of sync and it was causing it to flicker. So hopefully from now on the picture is going to be more pleasing to look at and the flicker isn't going to drive you insane. So I really got a kick from digging around this hard drive. The computer obviously belonged to a photographer, which was super nostalgic because my dad is also a photographer and this is exactly how he used his Mac. So I found some beautiful photos and also some other interesting stuff. Cereal box. Wait a minute. I know what that is. Somebody was into cracking things. Oh, okay, so I'm willing to bet that this copy of Toast Titanium and also Office, yeah, is not legitimate, which is cool. I mean, we all did that back in the day. So I'm glad we had the chance to take a look at this account. But we're gonna clean up this desktop a little bit. And yeah, I guess we're gonna try running some other software on this Mac. We'll just see what else it can do. So I've copied a number of games and programs I wanted to test out on this machine. First of which being GarageBand, because I like making music on these old systems. And this is what I feel these old Macs are legitimately still useful for. So I recorded myself playing the guitar, but you'll see that at the end of the video. Now, since this computer was running Tiger, that meant that I could test both the OS 9 and OS 10 applications. So I started by testing some of the OS 9 games I remember playing as a kid. First off, we have Nanosaur by Pangea Software. This is a childhood classic I used to play on my dad's old iBook G3. Again, these old colorful games really did look their best on the CRT, and this computer did an excellent job running this game in classic mode. So after having a bit of fun, I moved on to another Pangea game, which is called Bug Them. It's again one of those games I remember running on my dad's old laptop. I actually think it came pre-installed on that iBook. And as I've mentioned in some of my previous videos, Apple computers just weren't a thing in the late 90s and early 2000s where I live, and the software support was atrocious. You couldn't buy games at the store, and we had dial-up internet, so even the pirated stuff was off. So I was really happy when I got emulators for my machine, because they were a way of getting a huge game library while keeping the file sizes very small. So I've tried out a couple of emulators for this G4 system, and they all ran pretty good. I've also tried emulating some SNES games, and that also worked without issues. And even though this is emulation, seeing these games on the CRT just feels kinda right. So I knew I could run NES and SNES emulators on this system, but one thing I wasn't sure about was the N64 emulation. In my last video, I tried running the Mupen 64 emulator on a Power Mac G4, and for some reason the performance was really bad, even though that was a high-end system for the time. So that emulator wouldn't even start up on this machine. So I've tried using 64s, which is actually an emulator I remember using in the early 2000s. And surprisingly, it actually ran. You can see it here running Super Mario 64 at around 20 to 25 frames per second, which isn't amazing, but it's better than I've expected. I also tried Mario Kart 64 and it achieved similar results. Now, having said that, not all games I've tried work as well as those did. Banjo-Kazooie, for example, had serious graphical and performance issues. Now, I don't really blame this system for the in-game models being white, even though it is kind of racist. This is something I've experienced on other systems and emulators. What was more concerning was the performance itself, because the game ran on average about 5 frames slower than the other ones did, which if you only have 20 FPS to begin with really makes the game unplayable. So moving away from emulation, I wanted to try out Unreal Tournament 1999. Now as a kid I actually played more UT 2004, but I wasn't sure this system was capable of running that, and the original release really did run really good. Now this thing was released around the time when DVD readers were becoming ubiquitous, so I wanted to see how well of a job this thing would do playing a DVD. So I've popped in an era-appropriate DVD, and honestly I think this computer makes for a pretty good media experience. Now again, this is something that's really hard to get across on camera, but I personally think that the DVD quality video really looks awesome on a CRT, and the speakers also sound pretty dang good.
Oh no, I was taking the gabagool and shit out of the fridge.
So after watching The Sopranos for a while, I've decided to clean up my desk and also to give the computer a proper cleaning.
So I'm really glad we got this machine up and running, because it turns out it's quite a neat little machine and it's actually quite a bit more capable than the iMac. So what we're going to do is we're going to button this thing up, and I'm not sure whether you can see that on the camera, but this computer is kind of dirty, and the fact that this computer has this snow white colored plastic, it really makes the dirt pop up. So we're gonna try giving this thing a good clean. And also, if I haven't mentioned that before, this board thing is missing like all of the screws, so I don't really want this computer to fall apart, but I don't really have the original screws. So I looked around and I have a couple of stashes of just various bolts and computer screws, and I thought I found some that might fit well. These reminded me of kinds of screws that you could usually find on Mac computers, but unfortunately they weren't the right size. The thread was too small. So I actually found some that fit, and obviously these are not original. The heads are large enough to hold the plastic together, and I would feel more comfortable if this thing was just properly held together with screws so that it doesn't just fall apart.
So I got to work cleaning this thing. I make my own cleaning solution using some distilled water, vinegar, alcohol, and some detergent, and it really does a good job when paired with a microfiber cloth. So this thing has been sitting in a shed for Lord knows how many years, which is why it was infested by spiders. But it also had all sorts of grime and dirt, which, as I've said, was very noticeable on this snow white finish. Fortunately, it all came off without too much issue. There were a couple of spots which I used this more abrasive sponge on, being very careful not to scratch up the plastics, and that worked really good.
Okay, so we're gonna try installing these screws, and the reason I'm using these ones is because, I mean, they fit, and I think I have enough matching ones to actually make this kind of half-ass decent. I mean, it definitely doesn't look like an Apple original, but I think it's better than to just have them off. I don't feel comfortable leaving screws out of this large piece of plastic. Okay, let's see now. Put one in. Come on. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay, so while we have the machine oriented this way, we're going to put in the cover. Oh god, I should have put this part first. Ah man, don't you hate that? The cover is going to have to come off again. Okay, so since this thing has been powered on, I don't really want to mess around the CRT tube, because that thing could still hold a charge, and I don't really feel like discharging that. I mean, if you're going to mess around with a CRT, you should definitely discharge the tube, but since I'm just going to be putting in a couple of screws, I should be fine. Where the hell did I put the screws? Come on, man. Okay, I think I found them. Yep.
So I've managed to reinstall the cover without killing myself.
Okay, so I think now we're good to put this thing back together. The switch seems to be intact. Oh, come on, man. Serious? I found another spider, guys. How the hell did you get in there? How the hell do I get you out of there, man? Come on, you. Oh, it was dead, I think. Poor spider crumbling up. Sorry, buddy. I'll take my handy brush and I'm just going to try to brush as much as I can. We're going to wet this thing down a little bit so that we're not spreading the dust around.
This area was really tricky to clean, but I got my brush in there and did my best.
Okay, so we got the majority of the crap out. I guess we can try putting the screws back again. This thing came with, I guess this is some sort of a dampening sponge or something, but it has just gotten disgusting, so I'm actually going to peel it off. Yeah, it has deteriorated, so we're just gonna clean this up and put it back in. So the cover goes on like this, but before we close it up, we're going to just try cleaning around the plastic as much as possible. This thing has just the tiniest bit of oxidization here, but I don't feel like messing with that at the moment. It's not a big deal. The cover goes on like that, and the only screw that was in here was this one, but it's so mangled up that I don't really feel like putting it back in. So we're gonna try finding a replacement. Okay, let's just see how this one fits. Yeah, this one will work great. And then for these ones, I believe the base goes on that. This is the base, and yeah, we're just going to give the base a good clean as well. Okay, so let's see how this goes back on. Screws go here, and then the third one goes in here. So we have to put in 2 more screws here. And I do believe that I have exactly... Oh god, did I just lose my last screw?
So I've spent like 7 minutes looking for the freaking screw on the floor.
Oh, found it! Found it. Okay, so before we put the base back on, I'm gonna give this thing one last good clean. So this thing is actually fairly tricky to put on because you don't have any clearance. The Allen key that I have is just a bit too short to be able to get in there, but it's just short enough in this orientation that, yeah, I can actually get it in and hopefully screw it back in. But yeah, this sucks. Okay, let's try doing this one. Oh god. Okay, and now we'll try doing the bottom one. So you can get this thing out of the way. And it's quite a bit easier than the other ones. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. You know what I did? Yeah. Put in the effing screw on the plate. I am not taking this thing back apart just for that. This base is on. It's sitting on the foot. It's not going anywhere. I don't care. I'm not putting this thing back apart. Screw it. It's fine. It's fine.
In case you've missed it, there was a screw that was supposed to go through the base and the plastic cover and into that metal shield. But when I had the thing apart, I accidentally put the screw in beforehand, which meant that I would have had to disassemble the thing completely to get to it, which I didn't feel like doing. So after reassembling this thing, I gave it one final wipe down before making sure that it turns on. And that base really does work really good. It's much more easier to adjust than the iMac, and it makes the computer look even cooler. So as promised, I made a little track using GarageBand, but I'm going to have to talk over it because if I don't, I'm getting a copyright claim for sure. So in conclusion, I really did have a blast with this computer. It comes from a fascinating period of Apple history. Not only was this thing geared towards the educational market, but it was also a last computer with the built-in CRT Apple ever made. After the eMac, the Apple design language really changed. Not only did they move away from the CRTs, but also from plastics in general. Not only did they start producing LCD-based all-in-one computers, but they've also settled on aluminum and glass design, which prevails to this day. This is a topic I'm going to cover in my next video. So if you enjoyed this one, you might want to consider subscribing. I do videos like this every week. I do overviews, restorations, repairs, all sorts of things. Also, if you had an eMac yourself, please share your experiences with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!